Our next guest is in the studio. The Honorable Dr. Architect Daniel Manduku is the MP for Nyaribari Masaba. Good morning, sir.
Morning to you.
Good to have you here again.
I always tell you it's a pleasure to come to this studio. Yes.
Safizana. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. Mheshimiwa, there's a lot that has happened. In fact, in Parliament. It's your first time in Parliament. And then people are coming into Parliament. Surely. You've not even finished a term. This is like baptism by fire, literally.
Correct, yeah. It was an experience like no other. First, I think, let me start by sending my condolences to the children that we lost in these demonstrations. I am one person who believes that one life lost is a life too many, whatever the circumstances, and there's no explanation whatsoever that can make that right. In fact, if you allowed me, I would even sing, so that
Judge, go ahead.
We remember these children.
Go ahead.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever, my Lord, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul.
You're a man of many talents. You've sung that beautifully.
Very well.
I want to say this, and even before I start the conversation, there are three images that come into my mind, born out of my experience on that day. The first image, and I think it was widely circulated, was that of Honorable Bishop Koskei being wheeled out of the chamber when the protesters came into the house and found that we had left him there. The second image is of the speakers being evacuated from Parliament ahead of the members of Parliament. And the third image is of that young man sitting on the speaker's seat and addressing the speaker in absence or in absentia. Why am I bringing these three images? The first image tells us that these young people were not malicious. Because if they were malicious, they would have harmed my colleague, Bishop Koskei. But more than that, it tells you that we are very selfish as members of Parliament. How could we run away, go into the tunnel, and leave our physically challenged colleagues in the House? And that's what we did. The second picture, where the speakers are evacuated ahead of members of Parliament. In fact, Speaker Amazon Kingi was evacuated in an ambulance. You know, in the military, if we're in military formation, the speaker is a general. The deputy speaker is a lieutenant general. The minority leader, majority leader are the major generals, and some of us are corporals and other ranks. In warfare, the general leaves last. You first ensure that your soldiers have all left or have been evacuated, then you leave. Here, it is the reverse. But more than that, when a speaker is evacuated in an ambulance, what does that tell you? The third image, that photograph, which has been circulated, I think I watched it from even CNN. And when you look at this scenario, whatever you want to say, Parliament was taken over. And this is a first, not just in this country, but I think in the whole of Commonwealth. I've tried to read through history and haven't seen any other jurisdiction where people have protested and entered parliament. And it therefore goes to confirm what Article 1 of our constitution says, that power belongs to the people. And we only exercise it as elected MPs or as elected leaders on their behalf. And so in a sense, that day, they came for their power. And I would like this argument to be philosophical. Because, I gave a statement and said, I think we should all go home and seek a fresh mandate, because the owners of the power have come for it. And they came for it in broad daylight.
Yep.
And this is despite 2 assurances by the Speaker. The minority leader raised a matter that morning, that he thought there was a problem. And the Speaker deferred that and asked the majority leader to get an answer. And in the afternoon, before the sitting commenced, the Speaker confirmed that we were in very safe hands. In fact, he said that himself, plus the clerk, have ensured that we are totally safe in the House. See what happened? But when all is said and done, I think the mood of the country is that we elected people have failed them. In fact, you'll be surprised after my statement. By evening that day, 400,000 people had supported me in this country, saying, yes, it's time. We went home and sought a fresh mandate.
Can I ask a question, Mheshimiwa? When the speakers were assuring the members of parliament that they were safe from what exactly? At what point were you in danger, and what were you in danger of?
The fear was that we knew that the protesters had promised to come to parliament.
Yes.
The manner and method in which they would come was not known to us. And so that was a fear. Was it going to be violent? In fact, our main fear was, if they try and access parliament, will there be a confrontation with the police? Because parliament was heavily guarded and sealed by the police. And so the minority leader raised the question, and it is in the answer. The assurances are all in the answer that we are very safe in the House. In fact, the Speaker used the word, these are hallowed grounds, which means they are safe and sacred. And see where we got ourselves.
Was any member of parliament harmed by this crowd?
No one was harmed. And that goes to confirm that this crowd had no malicious intention. No one was harmed. They came into the House, ate our food, or ate their food.
That I think is more accurate, yes.
And then walked into the chamber, and they were done. That was their mission. Mission accomplished. They came, they saw, they conquered. Veni, Vedi, Vinci.
And they left.
And they left. And they made a point. The irony of it is that we ran away. None of us was brave enough to stand and listen to them. We don't even know if they had a memoranda to present to us in the House.
So that opportunity was missed.
Probably. And that's why, if you look at it philosophically, someone has come to parliament. He has come, taken the mace. Never mind, they say it's a dummy mace, whatever it is. But no, the mace is a symbol of authority.
Yep.
Just like if you go to the court of law today, regardless of where the court sits, there's always a coat of arms. During the handover ceremony of the presidency, there's the sword. Those are symbols of authority, which are recognized in law. So they have come and taken the mace. What have they shown you? They have told you you're not in charge of this house. You're not in charge of this country. Philosophically. Of course, this proposal is not popular with my colleagues. But I have no problem with that because none of them votes for me anyway. But the thing is this.
And you're sure of that, of course, because
of course.
None of them is nominated from Nyaribari Masaba.
Yes, so, and they've asked me 3 questions. First, they are saying, Manduku, you had a corruption case at the port. Am I a saint? No, I haven't said I'm a saint. But more than that, this is not the issue. You're missing the point. Secondly, they have said, why don't you resign? Parliament is constituted by quorum. As long as there are 50 of us, we will still transact business. So my resignation will not have an effect because Parliament will still go on. Then the third question, they keep saying, there's no legal provision for this.
Dissolution of Parliament.
Of course, they're missing the point again. At least I have created a conversation. And if there's no legal provision, then we can create the legal provision first. But more than that, if you look at the provisions right now, the only recourse is, I think, Article 140 of the Constitution, which allows for recall of members.
Yeah.
And I can assure you very many members are going to be recalled. Because the mood in the country is that Parliament has failed them. But there's also another provision. I think it is Article 267, which is a process where someone can go to court and seek judicial interpretation. And I'm sure if someone did that, the courts may pronounce themselves. But all that notwithstanding, I feel that it is time we went for a new election.
Everybody goes home.
And a new election will help us solve very many things. And allow me to tell you. The first thing this will solve is that you remember in 1992 when the late Joseph Kamodo lost his seat in Kangema, he remarked that even a dog would have won on Ford Asili. If we go for an election today, it will solve the 6-piece election mantra.
Once and for all.
Yes, because you'll interrogate your member of parliament based on his ability, not because of the candidate he supports up or the candidate that he supports down. We normally go to election, and because of our political architecture, vote on a certain formation. And so out of the 6, you're likely to get 2-3 wrong guys in terms of capacity, in terms of ability, even in terms of competence. But when you have one election, then you can get the right person without influence from the top or below. The second thing it will solve, and depending on how we do it, we can start having now what we call a staggered election. You see, in Kenya, we go home every 5 years, from the president, senators, governors, members of parliament, MCAs. And that has had a very bad economic disadvantage, because our economy develops in a 5-year cycle. I remember the former president Uhuru Kenyatta telling us that 1 year after election, we are settling down in government. 1 year to election, we are in the campaign mode. But having a staggered election, therefore, we'll have the advantage that parliament will always be in session when other elections are held. And it will be a point of what we call midterm review. If you look at the US Constitution, very few people know that Americans hold elections every 2 years. And only the presidential election comes once in 4 years. Now, that gives advantage in continuity. The third thing that this will sort out, we'll have political party discipline. Because political parties will be engaged throughout. Because every 2 years, you are doing maybe county assembly elections.
Yeah.
And don't forget that we fund these political parties from the exchequer. Number 4, it will keep the IBC busy. Right now, IBC staff are waiting for the next election. But if they know that every 2 years they're preparing for an election, then IBC will be fully utilized. The only thing we have to do is to ensure that these elections are affordable. And so I think this conversation must start.
There are very many things that you're proposing here. You're proposing to have the staggered elections. You basically, it starts from the principle of, can we first of all dissolve parliament and then start this conversation all afresh? Is there any legal provision that can get the parliament dissolved? Do you feel that parliament has legitimacy to sit today from the sovereignty of the Republic, the people of Kenya. And I hear you saying you don't feel that.
I don't feel that, and I can repeat that again. I don't feel that.
You don't feel that the people look at that assembly and feel that it's legitimately constituted?
Well, legally constituted, yes, it is. The question here is the trust issue. The Kenyan people have lost trust
in that
in
institution.
that institution, although it is legally constituted up to 2027.
Do you feel the people of Nyaribari Masaba have lost trust in their member of parliament?
Of course not. That's why I'm saying let's go to the elections. And I'll come back without a problem if I run again. That I can take to the bank.
So every member will tell you the same.
Fine, then let's go.
And they'll argue, then there's no point of going to an election.
Well, actually, I
Because,
don't know. I know very few members who
I'm driving towards this, Mheshimiwa, right?
Yes.
And this is something that people have told you resign. And you said, you see, if I resign, just one short member. I mean, there was a seat that was declared vacant in the National Assembly the other day by the Speaker. Please remind us what seat this is.
That is
Magarini, right? So it was declared vacant. And, well, Parliament is still sitting. It has quorum. So even if we now get one short member, Nyaribari Masaba, same kind of thing. There's no IBC anyway, so it's the people of Nyaribari who will not have a representative in the House. However, there's something you'll have brought to the fore.
You see,
and that is the entire principle of what you're saying. What you're saying is, I feel that when I sit in this House, the people of the Republic of Kenya, whom I represent in this National Assembly, do not have faith and trust in anything that I'm doing.
That
so
is
for
true.
that reason,
that's
I'd like
correct.
to take the first move and tender my resignation. And
That is
any
fine.
other member who feels the same, is compelled by their conscience, will do the same. And we'll have an election.
Now, the challenge is, if you look at the flip side, once a member resigns, for example, if I resign tomorrow, then everything stops, including CDF allocation. So, in my absence, I will not be able to execute things that would help other people. For example, the bursary allocations to schools. When a member is not in place, or when a constituency is vacant, the people who suffer more are the people in the grassroots, because all programs stop.
And if Parliament is dissolved, they don't stop.
It will be for a predictable time. It will be predictable that it's only 3 months, and it will be synchronized with others. You see, now the challenge here is, I will not give bursaries in my constituency, but the neighboring constituencies will be given. So that there's that disconnect. But if we all say, okay, for 9 months, for 3 months, 90 days, everything stops, it is synchronized across the country. And that is a challenge.
That's not a challenge. On the higher ideals and principles that you're pushing, that is not a challenge. Because you can go back to your people and ask the people, I feel that we need to seek fresh mandate. I feel that we need to speak to the country and say,
Daniel Manduku voted
the people
no.
of Nyaribari Masaba
Daniel Manduku voted
have
no.
faith.
Are you asking me to resign because I voted no? Or
because your conscience tells you.
It's a principle we are speaking of.
And you said, let's discuss this from the philosophical angle. And the philosophy here is that you've said, and I asked you and you said directly, that you do not feel that the people of Kenya have trust in Parliament. You don't feel that Parliament, as it is today, has legitimacy from the people of Kenya.
Based on the reactions that I have received, and I think they also you also have access to this, you can see that it is something that the public is willing to discuss. It is something that the public believes in. The second thing I raised again in that letter was on the constitution of the cabinet.
Yeah.
I must say that I have no locus to advise His Excellency the President. But then, we live in this country, and in all honesty, even if we belong to the opposition, we feel that we want to help him. Now, if you listen to the President giving his agenda, he seems to have clarity, whether it is a housing program, whether it is what we've just been discussing, the social health insurance program, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is water, education. He seems to know exactly what ails the country. But then you look at the time now, we are 2 years down the line, we have only one active year, because in 2026 we start the campaigns. And you feel that there's no traction. And as a layman, I'm asking myself, okay, I only hear these things from His Excellency the President. I don't hear them from his ministers. I'll give you an example. One of the pet programs is a housing agenda. And I came here and defended the housing agenda to the core. You remember?
Yep.
And I know a lot of work has been done. A lot of work has been done in the housing realm. But then I have not seen the minister in charge talking about it or even visiting a site. I only see her visiting the site when the president is there. And this is what people start asking. I mean, are people working? Look at what we've just been discussing about the social health insurance. The Senate just rejected 2 regulations this week. And you wonder, this thing has been in the works for more than a year. Well, actually, almost 2 years. And you miss on public participation, which is a very obvious requirement in law.
Yeah.
And then you're sent back. You see, you ask yourself, is there no traction? Let me tell you, Mwai Kibaki's government is on record as having implemented 97% of cabinet resolutions. I don't know how much this one is at, but it may not be near there. So I think he needs to reconstitute his team and get effective program delivery.
Implementation here, does that also mean completion?
Well, implementation ideally means from conception, the actual implementation, completion, handover, and even use. For you as a citizen, what is important to you is when you're using that facility.
See, the thing that I wonder is the 3%. Does that therefore mean that there are projects that were never started, the projects that were started and not completed? And yet, if I understand government and the nature of it, it's a continuum. The fact that one government starts a project doesn't mean that they're the ones who are supposed to complete it.
Agreed, but you see, in project management, there are what we call milestones.
Yes.
You can say we started 10,000, we have finished 15,000, another 20,000 are at 80% completion, another 15,000 are at 90% completion. Those are the kind of things we need to hear from the minister. And tell us, for example, how many people are on site. The president knows that. But the minister needs to come and show us and tell us, okay, in this whole chain, construction chain, we've got 100,000 young people engaged. 5,000 of them are plumbers, and they are gotten this certification. Those are the things that people want to hear. And then, therefore, you can justify the programs.
Very true, but what you're saying seems to imply that the fact that the president can roll out numbers and the requisite minister doesn't, you think it therefore means that the minister doesn't have the numbers or doesn't know the numbers?
It doesn't matter. We're in a political system. You are judged by what people know and what they've heard from you. Do you know we have a minister for water?
Yes.
Have you had any water programs in this country going on? And water is a critical infrastructure that we need. And we were promised 100 dams. How many have been done? How many are in tender stage? How many are ongoing? Those are things that people ask us in the village. We don't know when we are getting the water. We don't know when it will come. But we know something has been done. And it's about the optics sometimes.
That brings in the issue of the cabinet secretaries being, so you say, aloof, quiet, not visible, not appearing to understand or to support the president, and then not being accountable, which brings in the role of Parliament in its oversight role in actually blowing the fish out of the water and saying, we have a cabinet secretary here, these are the programs that the government has, this is the money that we have appropriated to this ministry for this kind of projects, and we are not seeing movement in these projects. But we also don't hear the same coming from Parliament. It appears that the people have lost faith in their institution, which represents them. This is the National Assembly. What happens? What should happen? Should members actually conscientiously decide to go and seek a fresh mandate? Should we have a provision that can easily dissolve parliament. When people appear to have lost confidence in the executive, what should happen? Should there be another way of reconstituting that executive? You raised the issue of cabinet secretaries, and I said, so if cabinet secretaries appear not to be performing, the one institution that's supposed to oversight them, apart from their boss, the president, is parliament. And seeing this is the mandate of this ministry and the state departments under it, and we don't feel like you're doing your job. Has that matter been brought to the floor?
You saw the other day we were discussing the fertilizer scandal.
Yep.
And we raised the matter as opposition. And coming from the minority side, we are overwhelmed by the majority side. And so it always boils down to a party affair. And so I think either through orders from above or through any other agreement, there's a silent bond that cabinet secretaries are government employees. They serve the executive. And so coming from the majority party or coalition of parties, you cannot impeach them. And classic case of Linturi. The House decides, a small committee is formed, and they clean him up.
Yeah, but you know what happens?
Procedure.
What happens is that the matter is brought to the court of public opinion.
Correct.
The fact that this matter of Linturi's impeachment came to Parliament and everybody watched, everybody formed their opinion.
Correct.
We cannot fault the MP who actually brought this matter to the floor of the House. We cannot fault the MPs who voted by majority to accept this petition and to start investigating the MP, the cabinet secretary. Something has happened there.
I agree with you. And same, and that's my argument precisely, that those of us who voted no and those of the other side who voted yes, both constitute parliament. And in fact, I am not in support of members of the public harassing members who voted yes, because we have the principle of collective responsibility. The bottom line here is that Parliament failed in listening to the people, because the Finance Bill 2024, sailed through the House. Never mind that it's been referred back with a 100% amendment of deletion.
Yeah.
If you go by the principle of collective responsibility, and that's why when you ask me, I resign alone, then you lose that point, that we are collectively responsible. In other jurisdictions, like a country like Latvia, when they're tired of their parliament, only 10% of the voters can recall parliament. Only 10%. 10%. That's a very, very low threshold. You can go and say we are tired of parliament. Now, in our provision under Article 104 of the Constitution, we can only recall individual members. Now, my worry is we are going to trigger a flurry of recalls under that article.
Yeah.
So, rather than go that route, why don't we agree? It can even be a bipartisan approach. And I've said, best human resource practice. Some of us have taken loans and what. I understand all that. Best human resource practice. You pay the members for their unexpired term so that they can set their obligations and get the country on the right trajectory. That will be a cost that maybe we can discuss and have.
As we have this discussion, yes, it is clear that there's a disenchantment by the citizenry of the government, but it is more so with you, people who are members of parliament. Because, as you say, it's collective. If you are in the minority, and yet the majority vote in a certain direction, unfortunately, you will be tarred with the same brush, because it's
correct.
Parliament.
I agree with you.
So now, this same parliament, who clearly have shown us how they keep voting and how they are actually a department of the executive, do you really expect this parliament to pass any law that would lead to their own exit? That will never happen.
And that is why we're having this discussion. And I think you've touched on that matter. Let me give you a small story. On the Tuesday before the amendments were brought to the floor of the House, I read in the media that upon completion of the report in Naivasha, the Committee on Finance and Planning, National Planning, first went to State House and tabled the report there. And so we don't know whether what they brought to the House was the original or the copy of what they discussed in the State House. But whichever way you look at it, that is a compromised parliament, because the standing orders do not provide for committee reports going via elsewhere before they come to the House. And that gives you a glimpse of the nature of our parliament. You've been given a task as a committee. Go and do public participation, recommend areas that you think need amendment. Perfect job. Then bring the report to Parliament. But before they did that, they went, and it is in the media. In fact, the report was tabled 3 hours after it had been tabled in State House. Now, what precedent are we setting? Does it mean that every other report, including the committees we sit in, must go elsewhere first to the executive
before they come to the House?
Those are the things we are talking about. Someone may think I'm mad, but if you look at it critically, even forget about standing orders, forget about parliamentary procedures and processes. Look at the ethics of it.
Everything
Professional
is wrong.
ethics. You're a doctor. You've taken the Hippocratic oath. You've diagnosed me with something. Then instead of telling me the report, you take it to Latiff first. That is what is happening. And my colleagues, with due respect, are all professionals in this. All these people are and very high caliber professionals.
How do such people then earn
in these committees?
Honestly, so people who perform something which at the very least is despicable. You know full well what you took an oath to do. You abrogate that,
and that is what we are
that
saying.
Particular oath, and somehow we are supposed to overlook it and still consider you a Mheshimiwa and still consider you to be somebody whom we should respect, honestly.
And that's what you're saying, City. I think we need to get it right.
That's very true.
And we are not against anyone here. We're just saying, let's do these things right.
Mheshimiwa, how many of you voted no to the finance bill?
I think the last vote we were 106.
106 of you voted no.
Yes.
Right? Would it be right to assume that all of you voted no for the same reason? That you felt the people are against this? Principally, the move to increase taxation in this manner is wrong, and therefore, let us not accept this bill.
Well, I cannot say that, because some people may have voted because of the party position. The party came out very strongly, ab initio, and said, on this one, we are voting no, if you are in the opposition. So some of us may have voted no because of that reason. But most of us voted because we had read through the bill. And we had seen that some of these provisions may not augur very well for the electorate.
Right.
And in fact, some of those provisions can wait.
Okay.
But more than that, and something else that happened the other day, in Parliament we have what we call the order paper. Basically, it's the agenda for the day. And this was raised by Honorable Wamushomba. I think that was yesterday or the day before yesterday. We go to the House expecting to debate on a certain matter. But when you reach the House, you find a different agenda. I'm talking about the deployment of KDF. It was never in the order paper. It was for lack of a better word, sneaked in the morning. And normally, before the agenda is set, there is what we call the House Business Committee. It must sit, approve the business for the day or for the week or whatever. So you ask yourself, really? You remember the case of the discussion on the Deputy President's issue on the floor of the House?
Yep.
That was never on the agenda.
It sneaked in.
It is sneaked in. How is
so we have a rogue parliament.
Are we supposed
now
to work like that?
I want to come back to my question. Okay. 106 of you voted no, for whatever reason, but you believe that a majority voted because they believe that this is wrong. Okay? You feel that because of what we have done as parliament, not only on the finance bill, but on these other matters, where matters are sneaked into the order paper. They're actually not even on the order paper. They're just sneaked into the business of the House without due process being followed. Things are happening outside of Parliament and then coming to Parliament as an afterthought, or so it appears. There are very many things that this 13th Parliament has done that you feel this is not how Parliament should run. It runs contrary to our standing orders, to the laws of the Republic, to the spirit and letter of the Constitution. So many things. And that's why you're saying, why don't we all just go home? And I asked you a question, why don't you resign? I'm going to come back to that. As a leader, would you be willing to sit down with 106 members of Parliament whom you know they voted no, who you know feel at least one way the way you feel, and try and convince them, can we resign en masse? If 106 members of Parliament over 345 legislature, okay, 12 of them are nominated, of the others that are nominated, of all of you went home on the principle that we do not feel that this Parliament is legitimate, you'll be sending a point. And it's all
Agreed.
about sending a point.
It's something I'm ready to engage in. I have no problem with that. But there's something you touched on. The constitutional provision on separation of powers. You know, when I went to Parliament, and I'll give you a very local example, I thought my relationship with the executive would be like my current relationship with my mother-in-law, where you respect,
but you keep your distance.
You keep your distance. Most of us spend most of our time with the executive. We go to church together. They give us money for harambes. And therefore the line becomes blurred. Do you see the judges going to State House or magistrates, for example? Do you see them going to ministers' offices? No. They have kept on their lane. It's only us in Parliament who are always wavering.
I hear you. I want to come back.
And that is where
I want to
the
stick to
problem
that
starts.
question. Are you prepared to sit down with 106 members of Parliament in the very beginning?
I said yes, even this
and
afternoon.
say, we resign.
I said even this afternoon.
Are you prepared to be the first one to hand in your resignation
I
and
can
say,
do it.
you know what, let's actually go home and announce to the country, I am seeking to go back to my people of Nyaribari, Masaba, and ask them, give me a fresh mandate. If you still have faith that I'm representing you well,
that is something I can do tomorrow. I have no problem with that. But then, the point is this.
The CDF issue that you raised.
Is it Parliament or is it Daniel Manduku? You're not answering me.
It is Parliament. Parliament comprises...
And you gave a very good example. You
Parliament
said Magarini.
comprises 349 members.
Magarini is vacant today.
Yes.
There's another constituency that belonged to the late Kolo, Manisa.
Mm-hmm.
It's been vacant for a year.
Yes.
But life is going on in Parliament. The same things are being done in the manner I'm talking about.
We know in Magarini, the courts have ruled that there was an issue with the election.
Correct.
Right? Mm-hmm. If Nyaribari Masaba becomes vacant today, it will be clear that their member stands on principles. Their member does not just speak. Their member acts. Secondly,
let me tell you, Latiff, let me remind you.
I want to ask the question.
I have been in that space before.
Yes.
When I was accused of alleged corruption, when I was managing director of the Port of Ombaso, I called my minister and resigned. Remember?
Yes.
And went home. And for 6 months, so that I could allow for investigation. And for 6 months, I was just doing my things. Until they found that there was reason to take me to court. So it's a path that I've trodden before. It's a path I can take. I have no problem.
The downside,
but then will it have an effect?
The downside that you quoted was on CDF. Why would CDF be tied to the member of Parliament?
You see, you're not
the National Government Constituency Development Fund is a national government fund.
You're not getting me.
It is not a Parliamentary Service Commission fund.
What happens is, maybe I should enlighten you on this.
Please.
What happens is, as a member of Parliament, you're the patron of the national government CDF. Now, in the absence of the member of Parliament, the CDF committee becomes inactive. and it cannot transact business. Classic case is, ask yourself, Banisa, when is the last time the children of Banisa got bursary?
I do not know.
They haven't gotten it. I mean, do your research a bit and you'll get the facts.
We sat here with the National CDF board, and they pointed out to us that the CDF Act was amended in 2015. There was another one in 2017.
So it's 2017, yes.
Right? And in that amendment of that CDF Act, the issue of a member of parliament being a patron was removed.
Well,
so the law, as it sits today, does not have any role for a member of parliament.
Well, that is
NGCDF. All you do is you're oversighting. The team, the committee that manages CDF is independently chosen. There's an official that is seconded from the National CDF board. So there's no role for the MP in the law in the management of CDF. Tell me, why would the people of Magarini not get national government CDF on account of the vacancy?
There's a practice and there's a law. The practice is, and I can tell you without fear of contradiction, that in the absence of the member of parliament, at any particular time or in any particular constituency, the members will be disenfranchised because access to those funds will be locked. It happened in Bonchari when we had a by-election, when we lost a member for Bonchari. The only thing that happens is you don't lose the money. The new member of parliament comes in and finds the kitty has accumulated. But during the duration when there's a vacuum, you cannot access the money. Do your research a bit, then you can call me tomorrow.
That's illegal, isn't it?
Whatever you call it, that is a practice.
What does parliament do about that? For example, what is the current parliament doing for the people of Banisa?
Nothing.
As a national assembly,
nothing.
Should you not be ensuring that the people of Banisa are still getting CDF? Should you not be summoning the board of CDF and asking, have you disbursed money to
they'll tell
CDF
you, they'll tell you that the money is safe and intact, awaiting a member of parliament. Don't forget that projects that are done by CDF arise out of public participation, which is conducted by the sitting member of parliament. You cannot go and do any project without the member of parliament having conducted public participation, done a proposal to the board, obtained approval, and then you come for implementation. So you cannot assume the role played by the member of parliament.
There remains this question. In the absence of the fear that was exhibited by members of parliament when the citizenry approached parliament, in the absence of that fear, do you really think that your colleagues in parliament are convinced or that they're convicted that they are actually doing a horribly terrible job of managing the delegated powers that they have?
Good question, but I can't answer on their behalf.
Actually,
that's why I've come here to say I think we are not doing the right thing. Many of them, when you speak to many of them in private, without naming names, actually express those sentiments.
It doesn't help the citizenry. This is the whole point. Even if
one man must come out and say, you guys, wait a minute. I think we've lost track here.
Actually, even if they didn't say it and their deeds spoke for them, then it would be clear. But how do you engage reverse gears from an institution that is as compromised as this one? Because they make the laws, they still make the laws. So anything that moves towards them exiting is something they will fight tooth and nail.
Agreed. I mean, that is why we're having this conversation now. Therefore, the route to go is to ask the public to do massive recalls, because that is provided for in law.
That one is coming.
And if we start arguing about the law, we'll argue until tomorrow.
That one is coming. The massive recalls are coming.
So that appears to be like the only way out for us to save ourselves from the 13th Parliament is by all members, all voters across the 290 constituencies recalling their members.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.